Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 5th of June, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar, just recovering a little bit this morning off its lows on the short-term chart. So we're teetering along the bottom. The medium term is still bullish, so it's quite likely that we'll cross back through this trend. We do have a downside target, but we don't have it activated. So we're looking for a move back into bullish territory on the short-term cloud chart. That's the 60-minute chart, and the euro slowing down similarly. So we do have two targets for the euro, up and down, both activated. So quite a difficult call on the short-term chart. The medium-term chart still bearish. The yen, which we like to use as a lead indicator against the dollar, dollar is strengthening here already for the last few days. So it does imply, if it is a lead indicator, that we'll see the dollar strengthen against other currencies. Sterling, we're seeing that 133 rate was as low as 132 at one point a week ago, but we are just seeing sterling having a slight appreciation against the dollar. Medium term still bearish, of course. Against the euro, sterling is fairly flat. That medium term chart just looking to turn a little bit bearish. And against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling falling away here as well, so quite key there. And against the Australian dollar, sitting around that 140.74 level, medium-term transition quite clear. Looking at Bitcoin, sitting at $7,400, we've just crossed back below the cloud in the last 24 hours, back into bearish territory here. Downside target of 1.6%, medium-term downside 16% downside. So, and on the long-term chart, 5,600, 6,100, looking like we will test these levels, and we are seeing the long-term cloud now making the transition below. So quite key there. The US stock market had a good session yesterday. The indices were mostly up. S&P was up 1/3%. The Nasdaq 100 did actually put in another good performance, up another 1/3%, and pushing towards a new high there. The Dow Jones index was also up just under 0.4%, and the broader based Russell index was also up about 0.4%. So just a steady improvement there. Looking at the futures market, down very slightly this morning on the S&P. The Nasdaq E-mini also down very slightly. Too early to say which way the market's going to open today. The UK market down about 1/3% this morning on the blue chip index. The mid caps little changed, and we are seeing that short-term recovery playing through there as well. The DAX index in Germany flat this morning, still short-term bearish, and the French index also slightly down this morning, still short-term bearish. Japan had a fairly flat session overnight, little change there, and the Hang Seng index was also fairly quiet. So really markets waiting to see what Wall Street's going to do today. The Chinese local market Shanghai was up just under 0.2%, but still looking pretty bearish, medium and short term. And looking at the Sensex, the Indian market, it was down 1/4% as well, and the Australian market also down 0.4%. So stock markets generally just struggling in the wake of quite a strong showing on the US yesterday. Brent crude sitting still at this $75 level. Short-term bearish at the moment. We've got a downside target of 74.50, which is 1% lower. WTI also pushing lower. We're seeing that spread at the moment at around $10. $10.50, so that is opened right out. US nat gas sitting at $2.92, just can't break the $3 level, and starting to look a little bit more bearish on that short-term chart, so quite key there. Just taking a look at some of the other commodities, heating oil, looking pretty much like the crude chart, bearish short-term, 1.9% downside. Coffee looking quite good in the short-term chart, and also just starting to make a medium-term transition. So coffee is looking better. Cocoa is also interestingly looking bearish in the short term, medium term just struggling, but that short-term chart pretty bearish. Most soft commodities struggling here. We see sugar just pushing lower as well, so we're seeing a sell-off in softs. Looking at gold, we're sitting at 1290, just really struggling to get back through that 1300 level. So interesting to see that there. Of course, the long-term chart is still very much intact. It's just a case of the short term, we still do have potential downside. And the silver chart also just looking very choppy the last few weeks. In fact, the last few months, silver's looked pretty choppy. Taking a look at US 10-year yield sitting at 2.94%, just edging up. German bonds still just selling off short term, so we're seeing yields just rising there as well. Um, Apple was up 2/3% overnight, pushing to a new high. Amazon also looking quite strong, up 0.4%, and you can see the short-term chart there just pushing higher and higher. Google, which has been the laggard, having had a very good performance day before yesterday, um, is actually now looking, so Friday, now looking quite strong again, just crossing back above on the medium-term chart. Facebook holding the 190s, but was down over 1% overnight. And last of all, Microsoft holding that 101, a $100 level, sitting now at 101, up 0.4%. So Microsoft looking pretty strong. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.